Today I'm here with Director of Public Relations, Dirk Moore. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Emily.
Now, you're here today just basically to talk about you and your life and your role with the college. So I guess let's start with that first. What is it exactly that you do?
Well, I'm the Director of Public Relations, which means I'm in charge of the college communications and promotions efforts. So everything that's associated with promoting the college and making it look good and communicating to external publics, that's what we do in public relations.
So what's an example of that? Like a recent example, something that you've had to maybe get out to the public, or maybe like an event that you help publicize for the college?
Well, one of the big things that you've probably heard of is we're trying to raise money for two big construction projects on campus right now. One, an enhanced athletic stadium, the Fred Self Athletic Stadium, and then the other, the Woodrow W. McLaughlin Performing Arts Center, which is a $12 million facility that we're also trying to raise money for. So my office does a lot of the publications that are involved with a lot of the news releases that are involved with it, a lot of the idea generating that's involved with trying to pitch this to prospective donors and to alumni to get them excited about it. So there's a lot of things that are involved with that, everything from magazine articles to brochures to a DVD to advertisements and so forth. So it's a very multifaceted campaign that involves lots of things.
So it sounds like you kind of have your hand in everything. From production to magazines and whatnot.
And I have a very talented staff that works with me and does a great job in getting that accomplished. And so far we've raised a lot of money for both of those projects. We're going to be actually breaking ground this spring on the athletic center, and then we're moving forward quickly with fundraising for the Performing Arts Center. So things are coming along well with both of those projects.
That's great. That's great. So do you find that since Emory Henry is a very prominent presence maybe in this area, do you find that the local media is pretty receptive to picking up stories about Emory Henry and what the college is up to?
Yeah, they have been, especially in recent months. We've got a new president, as you know, and there is just a tremendous amount of excitement in the community for her and her style of leadership and the ideas that she has for this college. I think Emory Henry, because of that, is taking on a much greater prominence in Southwest Virginia than it already had, which was already significant, as you know. But I think Emory Henry is taking a much larger step forward in its reputation right now.
That's great. So part of your job, I know, and this may be an interesting part of your job, if something bad happens inside the college, you kind of have to take the steering wheel and kind of be the gatekeeper for the flow of information. Tell me about that. Do you find that exciting, or is that maybe not so much?
Well, it's not always pleasant, but it's part of what you do, and there is a certain element of it that isn't bad for the college all the time. I mean, if you are faced with a difficult situation, it gives you an opportunity sometimes to say things about the college that don't otherwise get said, that it is a college that cares about when things go wrong. It cares about its students, and it's not a perfect community, but when we have a problem, we're willing to address it head on, and always what's important to us are our students, their welfare and their education and their futures. And as long as we're emphasizing that in whatever crisis we face, then we're getting our message across about the kind of institution we are, and hopefully the other crisis or the crisis that's occurring will be less severe because of that.
That's good. It sounds like you care a lot about the college.
Yeah, I love this place. I've been here for 15 years, and I think the reason I love it so much is because the students, watching you do your work and watching other students in this mass communications department, there's just so much talent here, and you should all be so proud of what you do. I just saw a slideshow that was done by Professor Charles Goolsby for the art department, and I was looking at the selections of artwork that students had done for that, and it was amazing to me. I hadn't realized the level of talent that was in that art department until then, and how much it has grown just over the last few years. And so that's what keeps me here, is the fact that we have incredible students who are doing incredible things, and they're increasingly doing that.
Well, that's great. Now let's talk a little bit more about your life before Emory and Henry. I know.
Was there life before Emory and Henry?
I know, really. But you were telling me earlier about your experiences with 4-H, and I know that emphasizes community, just like Emory and Henry does.
Yeah.
And one story that you told me, I think our audience just needs to hear, because it is, I know it had to have been traumatizing, but tell me about the show steer that you found in a meat locker. Please tell me that story.
Well, it's a interesting story. I guess it's one that I try not to tell too much because it's sort of sad, but
it's very sad.
But it's also kind of humorous, and so I'm asked to tell this a lot. It was the 4-H carcass contest, they called it, and when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I showed a steer that was entered into this contest, and I really didn't know what it was about. I showed it like every other steer that I've shown, and I showed it at the county level, and it won, which gave it the opportunity to go on to the state level. And I showed it with about 30 or 40 other steers from all across the state, and this is in South Dakota, where I'm from. And you show it on the hoof, as they call it. You're showing it around the ring, and they judge it and place it, and it did fairly well there, but not incredibly well. And then afterward, they took the steer away, and I didn't understand that at the time, but I was young, and my dad said I had to give it up to this person, so I did, and didn't think anything of it. And then the next day at the fair, my brother came running to our trailer. We're in a campground at the fair, and he was all excited because Angie, which was the name of the steer, had won 7th place, and I was real excited. He said, "Let's go see him," and we got in our truck, and we drove off to see him. And before I knew it, we were driving up to a meat locker, and we went inside, and there was Angie, but he wasn't as I remembered him. He was not on the hoof, he was on the hook this time, and so he was all dressed out and slaughtered, and it was a terribly traumatizing experience for me. I didn't say anything, I didn't react in any way, and there was this carcass with this big purple ribbon on it, and which was supposed to be great news for me, so I tried to take it in stride, but from that point on, I no longer showed beef cattle. I showed breeding stock, because those didn't have to go to
they wouldn't end up on the hook. Well, I'm sorry to laugh at your trauma, but that is just, it's one of those stories that it's so very traumatizing, but if you tell someone later, I mean, it's a little bit of a dark
Well, I always, whenever I tell it, I have friends who call me, you remember the Golden Girls, Rose Nylander from Minnesota, who always told stories about St. Olaf? Well, that's one of my St. Olaf stories.
Oh, gracious. Well, thank you so much for
You
coming
bet.
by today.
Glad to be
and
here.
We'll have to have you by again.
Yeah, that'd be
Thank
wonderful.
you very much.